Yes, okay, we're ready to go.
아, 네. 네, 먼저 이렇게 좀 코로나 바이러스 19 때문에 직접 만나보지 못하고 이렇게 화상으로 인사드리게 됐는데요. 그에 대한 소감부터 먼저 여쭤볼게요.
Well, it's certainly less close, but we can see you just fine. So,
Yes, we're grateful for being here.
두 분께서 작업하신 아틀라스의 왕이 이번에 한국에서 열리던 스웨덴 영화제 개막작으로 선정이 됐거든요. 그래서 굉장히 좀 남다를 것 같은데요. 그에 대한 소감도 좀 여쭤볼게요.
we were of course super glad to hear that we were an opening film. I mean, 4 years ago, I started developing this script, which is based on my real life, because I wanted to share a different perspective on mental illness. And thanks to your festival, this perspective is now being shared with people in Korea. And I would have never imagined it 4 years ago.
Yes, it's really amazing to be screening in Korea. And especially since our film is actually a low-budget film, primarily financed by all of us working on the project against the share in the project, and we had no government funding to produce it. And without everyone involved, this movie would never have happened. So we speak for the entire team that we're very honored. And I was born actually in South Korea and adopted to Sweden. So to me personally, it's a great honor to have our film screened in Korea and even being the opening film of your festival.
시몬 같은 경우는 배우로도 출연했지만 자신의 이야기를 이제 시나리오로 썼잖아요. 어떻게 자신의 이야기를 시나리오로 쓸 생각을 했는지 그 과정에 대해서 설명 부탁드릴게요.
Well, growing up with these experiences, I felt very alone and ashamed of the diagnosis my father had, until I reached a point where I realized that I needed to do something constructive with my experiences in order to try and make a change. I as a kid, I just would have wished that somebody would have sort of stepped up and showed that there was a different perspective to mental illness. Because growing up, I just saw that it was mental illness, and schizophrenia particularly was portrayed as murderers or killers and very dark. And I just didn't recognize my dad in that. And so I wanted to try and do something very warm and with humor and so forth. Because that's something I felt like that made more justice to my father as well.
네, 써니 감독님께 제가 여쭤볼게요. 그 아틀란티스의 왕 같은 경우는 아버지와 아들의 이야기이기도 하지만 또 부모와 또 자식 간의 이야기이기도 하잖아요. 그래서 또 감독님께서 이 영화를 또 연출하시면서 그 본인의 부모와 자식 간에 대한 관계에 대해서도 좀 생각해보지 않았을까 하는데요. 어떠셨어요?
Yes, well, my experience with my adoptive parents here in Sweden was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved in his project and help him to tell his story. Because from an outside point of view, I mean, Simon's story is about, a dysfunctional parent, but on a deeper level, it's about a parent who unconditionally loves his son. And that, for me, was something really strong, and it drew me in. And because I'm adopted from Korea, I've always heard people telling me all my life that I was lucky. But most people don't know that I also grew up actually with a dysfunctional parent, actually two, but one more than the other. And it was mainly an abusive adoptive mother who didn't like me and kicked me out of the house when I was 14. And no one knew because she was a master to disguise it. So I've been thinking about that a lot. What makes a good parent? Many people, they have like preconceived ideas about parents just because they come across as normal from an outside point of view, while a lot of people judge parents, for example, with a diagnosis. And that just breaks my heart. So that's why I really wanted to help Simon to tell this story, to hopefully encourage people to really look beyond the diagnosis and see the human being behind.
심원 배우님께 또 여쭤볼게요. 그 직접 또 사무엘로 출연도 하셨잖아요. 그래서 그 본인을 직접 또 연기한다는 건 어떤 경험이고 어떤 기분일지 궁금하거든요. 거기에 대해서 설명 부탁드릴게요.
Playing myself in or a version of myself, that wasn't that hard. I approached it as just doing a job, so to speak. But the hard part was actually coming out with this story because there is a lot of stigma around mental illness, and as I wanted to do this story, my family were very much against it actually, and at one point they actually forbid me from doing it because they thought it would draw shame upon the family. So daring to make this film was actually the hardest part.
네, 심원 배우님께 좀 여쭤볼게요. 영화를 만든다고 했을 때 실제 이제 본인의 이야기고 아버지 이야기니까 또 아버지는 이 영화에 대해서 어떻게 반응을 하셨는지 궁금하거든요. 그래서 그에 대해서도 설명 부탁드릴게요.
So initially he was actually very much against me making the film. I let him read the script, and he read it, and he said it's an amazing script. It could maybe win awards or be screened at festivals. He was right. But he said, I absolutely forbid you from ever making this film because I don't want this to come out. But this was my big dream, and I sort of needed to get this out of my system to become whole in a sense. And he could see that on me, so that once he had forbidden me from doing this, he saw that how it affected me very negatively. And so eventually he told me that, and I of course accepted that, that's important to mention, but and he saw how I felt, and he said, I don't want to stand in the way of your dreams, so you should go ahead and try and make this film. And then he actually saw that Philip Sandén, or I told him that Philip Sandén was going to play him, and he became very glad because he was like, but he's handsome. And then eventually he saw the film, and it was a big premiere, and he was the one who laughed the most at the screening. So he has started, there's this bathroom scene, the toilet scene, and he has started blasting, laughing out loud. And now he is the film's biggest fan. He tells everybody about this film. He demands that everybody should call him King. And he brags about that his son has made this film. But actually, the perhaps the most beautiful thing I think is that he sat me down not very long ago, and he told me that it now feels like his life has had a purpose because of all the hardships he's went through those now have a meaning because they have led to something positive, and it's helped people like us.
소니 감독님에게 이제 여쭤볼게요. 이 작품 같은 경우는 또 사무엘과 클레오의 또 둘 연인 사이로 등장하긴 하는데 둘 모두 그 부모님 때문에 굉장히 좀 힘든 삶을 살고 있는데요. 두 사람의 선택이 달라요. 클레오 같은 경우는 이제 부모님을 따르고 또 사무엘은 자신의 삶을 찾아 나서고 그래서 그렇게 좀 다른 선택을 하신 이유가 무엇인지 좀 궁금합니다.
Yes, I'm glad you bring that up because it is a very important part of this story. And actually, in the screenplay, they got together. You wanted to get the girl, of course.
Wanted a happy ending, yeah.
And it was also shot like that. But then, when I was asked to step in and finish the film, it was crucial to change that, because this never intended to be a story like a boy meets girl story, because I knew what Simon really carried in his heart and what he wanted to tell. So I mean, the dramatic question in the film should not be will the boy get the girl. It is rather a story about will he break his codependency to his father and start to live his own life? Still, of course, with this profound love for his father, but without burdened by guilt of being himself and also have his own life. And then I also saw this chance of juxtaposition of the both that you brought up, the both characters, that Cleo, in the beginning, she's the one who comes across as this, free spirit and the strong one, while Samuel is the complete different, has the different story. But then towards the end, we as an audience, we will understand more and more that she is surprisingly the one who cannot break the codependency. Also wanted to explore her story a bit deeper, because we did receive feedback that we had problems with her character, that she came across as superficial and without depth, which we all agreed with. So this also solved much of that problem. So this is an example of my different hats, different roles in the project, that you could say that as a producer I had to tell the writers, Simon and Ursula, that they needed to write some additional scenes and we needed to do a few reshoots. We couldn't afford as many as we needed, but at least do what we could. And that was including this big final scene between Cleo and her mother, where Cleo really confronts the mother, which is a key in her story. But it's because that one gave her a choice to either stay or leave, and we don't know what she would do until a bit later. So they wrote that scene, and and then after it was shot, I had to put on my director's hat, you could call it. So now I could re-edit Cleo's entire story to give her more depth and give her that arc. And when she got that opposite arc, Samuel's arc was also emphasized. But even more importantly, I had to and could re-edit Samuel's story. So it went from a love story between a boy and a girl to a coming-of-age story between a son and a father. And those big changes, it was because that was your original vision. But as you know, in many projects, the original vision is often lost on the way. But I think we got as close as we could.
안 그래도 이제 그 말씀을 하셔가지고 이 영화에서 제가 가장 흥미로웠던 거는 이제 사무엘이 마지막에 아버지를 떠나서 이제 어딘가로 향하는데요. 저는 혹시 클레오를 만나러 가지 않았을까라고 생각을 했는데 저 옆에 계신 또 통역 선생님께서는 사무엘이 이제 엄마를 만나러 쿠바로 떠나는 그런 결말이다라고 했는데 그래서 여러 가지 해석의 여지를 남겨놓은 결말이 굉장히 좀 흥미로웠는데요. 두 분은 혹시 그 결말에 대해서 또 각자 생각하고 계신 바가 있는지 어떠세요?
Well, it's funny you ask because to me it never really mattered where he went. What mattered was this feeling of freedom and that he was going to live his own life. But after the film started screening, a lot of people came up to me afterwards and they wanted to know what happened after. And I hadn't really thought of that that much, but I do have an idea, of course, of where he heads to and what he does with his life. But to me, I like to leave it up to the viewer, really, because those are the kinds of films I love the most, where you get to imagine a bit at the end.
하면 소니 감독님이 아틀란티스의 왕의 관객으로서 그럼 그 결말에 대해서 감독님은 좀 어떻게 생각하시는지요?
You don't give up. You want us to give you the ending. No, but I agree with Simon. We actually agreed upon that early on, that we both wanted an open ending because it's up to the audience, to decide. And the moment we decide this as filmmakers, it actually affects his arc, his journey. Again, if we had shown, I think it's absolutely possible that he goes and sees the girl. Because he got the insight, he got what he needed in order to have the courage and the strength to step out and start to live his life. Then he can choose whatever he wants. But I think if we had imposed that onto the viewers, and then there's a risk that the point of the movie ends up with, oh yes, he got the girl. But again, that's not the focus. In this way, I think we can get both elements, that people really carry with them after the film, that this was more about a coming-of-age story, about stepping into freedom and becoming who you really are. And then for those who want him to get the girl, he can still get her.
네, 시몬 배우님께 좀 여쭤볼게요. 아까 이제 필립 잔덴 배우님이 캐스팅에서 이제 아버지가 잘생긴 것 때문에 굉장히 좋아하셨다고 하는데 실제로 좀 두 분이 만나 뵙기도 하셨는지 좀 궁금하네요.
Yeah, no, they met each other, and it was like two unstoppable forces met each other. It was just as soon as they met, jokes started pouring and it was just, you had to just back off and just look at it, that beautiful thing. But what Philip really grasped and what I really appreciated was that he saw my father for who he is, and he said to me afterwards, well, your dad's problem, so to speak, is that he is overly intelligent, and all of that sort of bubbles up and it becomes too much. And I think Philip really captured both the humoristic side of my dad, but also just Philip's ability was that he was able to see the person behind the illness. So he never portrayed an illness, he just portrayed a person who happened to have this illness.
아마 그렇기 때문에 좀 연기도 자연스럽고 인상적이지 않았나 좀 생각이 들고요. 그 소니 감독님께는 좀 이 아틀란티스의 왕 얘기 말고 이제 한국에서 태어나셨기 때문에 혹시 이제 한국의 컨텐츠에도 관심이 많지 않으실까 좀 생각이 드는데요. 혹시 최근에 좀 인상 깊게 보신 뭐 한국 컨텐츠가 있다면 무엇이 있을까요?
Yeah, recently I have to say since the film King of Atlantis, it was a while ago we premiered and all that, but I've been working 24/7, you as well, so I haven't had time to watch that many films, but one of the recent one is Parasite, which I love, that a lot of people love all over the world. And it's partly because, I mean, it's unique, but it explores current and urgent questions, but it does it in a surprising way, and with dark humor. And I'm a big fan of dark humor. So, and that was also one of the reasons why I wanted to be part of the King of Atlantis project, because it's grounded in something real, something serious, but you can still, bring out the humor in it. And I saw for a long time that I got this dark humor because of my challenging upbringing, but after seeing some Korean movies, I was thinking that maybe it actually came a bit with my genes.
두 분은 어떠신가요? 혹시 이제 다음 작품에도 인연을 이어가실 건지 아니면 이제 따로따로 차기 작품을 준비하고 계신 건지 궁금하거든요. 그래서 그에 대해서 좀 여쭤볼게요.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking, because I was about to ask Sony if she wants to work with me again.
No way, dude.
No, I'm actually, I'm developing a new script. I'm very early in the process, but I can test to see if you like the idea real quick. I'll do an elevator pitch. So after King of Atlantis, I thought I should do something different than mental illness. But then after the film premiered, I actually found my dad's old journal where he records his time when he fell into mental illness, schizophrenia. And it just fell into my lap, and it just contains all of this very dark humor and very bizarre imagery, which you have now said you love, so now you have to do it with me. But this journal was really too good not to be turned into a script and eventually into a film. And the story, really, in really broad terms, it's a story of a young man who falls into mental illness, and we get to follow his struggle as he struggles to accept who he is, despite society and family not accepting who he is. And it's also a beautiful love story between the characters of, what would be my mom and my dad, really, where my mom struggles with this moral dilemma of whether she should keep a baby of a mentally ill person or not. And on more broader terms, it would be a script and a film about what we put value on in society, because and what happens when you don't live up to the typical expectations of what you're supposed to be. And it would be sort of a prequel to King of Atlantis, which would explain how Philip Sandén's character became who he is. And maybe one day it could be screened at your festival. Who knows?
소니 감독님 관심 있으세요?
Yes. Well, I might be open to work with this guy again, but I think I need to sleep for a year before I have the strength to go into another King of Atlantis prequel. No, but seriously, it would probably be wonderful. I love the character, and of course also I know Petter, his father. It's an amazing person, and when I heard that you had found his journal, I was like, whoa! Really want to know more about it.
먼저 심원 배우님께요. 그 실제 이야기를 각본으로 옮길 때 가장 좀 신경을 썼던 부분은 어떤 부분인지 좀 궁금합니다.
Well, it was, to me, it was very important not to tell another sub story, so to speak. I wanted to share a story about mental illness with love, humor, and warmth. But I wanted it to be a good film. I wanted it to be entertaining from start to finish, because once you get into mental illness, the tendency is to think that it's all dark and it's all very cliched in a way. And I just didn't want to make that again. And actually, Sony and Ursula Fogelström, my co-writer, they were great help with this, because they would see the film from an outside perspective, and especially Sony, you focused on the character development and the more technical aspects of movie making. That was the most important thing for me, to make a good film first and foremost.
소니 감독님께 드리고 싶은 질문은요. 그 영화 작업뿐 아니라 그 비디오 게임의 각본가로도 참여하고 또 텔레비전 드라마의 다이얼로그 코치로도 참여하고 다양한 그 예술 매체 분야에서 활동을 하시는데요. 그 영화만이 갖는 매력이 있다면 무엇일까요?
Yeah, well, I mainly work as a screenwriter, so I will refer mostly to that, but it also applies, of course, to directing. I love working for, writing for a game and for television, because in TV drama you can go really deep, and you can explore it, and it's so much material. But actually my favorite format is the feature film length format. And it's because, to me, storytelling is all about character change. I'm not talking about a happy ending, but character change. When it comes to a movie, you have to be able, as a filmmaker, no matter what position you are in, you have to tell that story of that internal change within a very limited time frame. It's extremely difficult to do that within the feature format, and that's also why I love that format. It's an amazing challenge.
심원 배우님께 이제 질문 드리겠는데요. 자신의 이야기를 영화로 만들어서 그리고 완성을 했는데요. 그것 때문에 부작한 게 있어가지고 영화를 만들기 전과 또 만들기 후에 좀 변화한 측면이 있는지 궁금하거든요.
I think by me opening up about this subject, because I had kept it secret almost my whole life. I had childhood friends who didn't even know that my father had this diagnosis. I think by sharing it and seeing that I wasn't alone with my experiences, I think that sort of strengthened me as a person. And as I became more, stronger, if you will, I became more sure of myself, and as a consequence, I became more sure of how to handle my father. And it also put some distance, this film put some distance to the relationship to my dad. And a lot of being codependent is about not being able to prioritize your own needs, because you're constantly focusing on other people's needs. And so I've become much better at communicating those needs and setting boundaries towards my dad mainly, but it's a great skill in general too.
Thank you for the interview.
감사합니다.